Really is. And our mission today is to figure out how life doesn't just scrape by here, but actually flourishes. Because the source material details this massive interconnected biological web that spans like sprawling seagrass meadows, coral reefs, and dense mangroves.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. How is it physically possible that such an extreme, hot, murky environment supports all of this life?
Well, it really comes down to incredible specialization and honestly, an almost terrifying level of interdependence.
Okay, terrifying how?
Well, you have to look at this ecosystem like a highly complex, finely tuned mechanical watch. Every single creature living in the Gulf is a highly specialized gear in that delicate machine.
Right.
And because the baseline conditions, the suffocating heat, the intense salinity, the shallow depth are just so extreme, there's zero margin for error.
Wow, zero.
Literally zero. If one species fails to perform its specific role or, if one gear slips, the entire system feels the shockwave immediately.
That is wild. So to really understand the machine, we have to start at the foundation, right?
Absolutely.
Before we look at the flashy predators or the giant whales, let's dive down to the sandy bottom. We are looking for the literal roots of this ecosystem, which are the seagrass beds.
Yeah.
And patrolling these beds is one of the strangest animals in the Gulf, the dugong.
Oh, they are magnificent, bizarre creatures. They're massive marine mammals, closely related to manatees, but they have this very distinct spatulate kind of paddle-like tail that powers them through the shallows.
And their diet consists of exactly one thing, which is plants. I like to think of dugongs as massive underwater robotic lawnmowers
That's a great way to put it.
because they just slowly cruise along the bottom, spending hours aggressively ripping up the seagrass. Like the documentary actually shows them leaving these incredibly distinct trenches or like furrows in the sand behind them.
Yeah, they do.
But they aren't the only ones out there grazing. You've also got green sea turtles doing this.
Right, the females.
Yeah. The female turtles will travel hundreds of kilometers to lay their eggs in the exact same warm beach sand where they were born. But when they aren't nesting, they're spending the time right here, grazing in these same underwater pastures alongside the dugongs.
Which introduces a really fascinating paradox. Well, think about it. If the seagrass is the foundation of the ecosystem, having massive mammals and ancient turtles constantly tearing it up by its rhizomes, which are those thick horizontal underground stems that anchor the grass, it sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Right. It sounds like they're destroying their own home.
Exactly. But this is where the mechanics of this ecosystem start to reveal themselves. Eating the grass is the very action that saves it.
Wait, really? So by carrying up the grass, they are actually forcing it to survive.
Yes.
It's kind of like when I aggressively prune my tomato plants. Like it looks like I'm destroying them, but it actually forces the plant to grow back thicker and healthier.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The dugongs and turtles tend to eat the older, tougher shoots that are just blocking out the sunlight.
Oh, okay.
So removing those old leaves triggers a biological response in the plant. It stimulates the growth of fresh young shoots.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, they essentially prevent the seagrass beds from becoming overgrown, stagnant, and prone to disease. And that healthy, actively growing grass performs a crucial physical function.
Which is locking down the sand. Right.
Exactly. Its dense root system stabilizes the loose sediment on the seafloor.
Because if those roots weren't locking the sand down, I imagine the ocean currents would just constantly whip that loose sediment up into a blinding underwater dust storm.
Precisely. And a dust storm like that would block out the sun completely.
Wow.
So by keeping the sediment locked down, the grass keeps the water relatively clear. And the thick foliage creates a perfectly safe, stable nursery for baby fish and tiny invertebrates to hide from predators.
It really makes you rethink how you view destruction. Like we see a turtle tearing up a seabed and assume it's a negative impact, but it's really the necessary catalyst for renewal.
Right.
It's a fantastic reminder for your own life, honestly. Like sometimes clearing out the old overgrowth is the only way to make room for new development.
It really is. It is the first gear turning in our watch. The grazers keep the grass healthy, the grass holds the sand down, and that stable, clear environment allows for the construction of the next massive feature of the Gulf.
Right, because once the sand is stabilized, a completely different kind of architecture can take hold. The coral reefs.
Yes.
They literally raise themselves off the ocean floor like these petrified gardens. But building a reef in the Persian Gulf is an uphill battle, isn't it?
Oh, correct.
Because these corals are already stressed to their biological limits by the extreme heat and the high salt content we mentioned earlier. But they also face a massive local threat from competing organisms that are just trying to smother them.
Yeah, because space on a reef is premium real estate. Everything is fighting for a solid surface to attach to and grow.
Right.
And in this high-stress environment, corals are incredibly vulnerable to being outcompeted, particularly by sea sponges.
Told you.
Yeah, sponges grow at an incredibly rapid pace, much faster than coral. So if left completely unchecked, they will expand and literally suffocate the reef-building corals.
Hold on, wait. I always thought sponges were like a sign of a vibrant, healthy marine environment. Why are we cheering for something to wipe them out? Why does the coral get VIP treatment over the sponge?
That's a great question. The coral gets priority because it is the foundational architect of the entire system.
Okay.
Corals build those large calcareous skeletons, meaning the hard, calcium-based rock-like structures that form the actual physical mountain of the reef.
Right, the actual structure.
Exactly. Without that three-dimensional structure, there are no caves or crevices for the rest of the ecosystem to live in. Sponges are natural, yes, but they are opportunistic space takers.
Ah, I see.
And because the corals are constantly battling the baseline stress of the hot, salty water, they simply do not have the extra biological energy to fight off the fast-growing sponges.
Enter the hawksbill turtle, also known locally as the bissa.
Yes,
They have this very narrow, distinctly hooked beak that looks like a pair of precise surgical forceps, and they act as a highly targeted regulator for the reef.
they really do.
By specifically seeking out and eating the sponges, and using that hooked beak to reach deep into tight crevices, the turtle clears away the overgrowth and frees up the vital surface space the corals desperately need to expand.
They are essentially weeding the garden.
Wow, yeah.
But even with the sponges cleared away, the corals face another challenge. We mentioned the grass keeps the sand down, right?
Right.
But the waters of the Gulf are still filled with microscopic organic debris and floating plankton that can cloud the water and block the intense sunlight the corals need to survive.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This brings us to a creature historically famous for human trade, but ecologically vital for a totally different reason. The pearl oyster.
Ah, yes.
For centuries, the Persian Gulf was the global center for pearl diving. But if we forget about the jewelry for a second, these oysters operate as heavy-duty industrial-grade water filters.
They are the municipal purification plant of the reef.
Exactly.
Pearl oysters filter absolutely massive volumes of water every single day. They draw the murky water over their internal gills, they trap the suspended plankton and organic particles in a layer of mucus for food, and then they expel crystal clear water back out into the sea.
It's like having millions of living Brita filters permanently attached to the seafloor.
Exactly.
And by continuously pulling that particulate matter out of the water column, they are actively managing the clarity of the entire sea.
And water clarity in a shallow sea is the difference between life and death.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
By clearing the murk, the oysters allow the intense desert sunlight to penetrate deep down to the corals and the seagrasses. Both of those organisms absolutely require that solar energy for photosynthesis.
Plus, just by existing in these massive cluster colonies, the physical oyster shells themselves create new real estate.
Yes, they do.
They form these intricate micro-neighborhoods, acting as a hard, stable surface for young corals, algae, and tiny invertebrates to attach to. They're basically building the foundation of the city while simultaneously scrubbing its air clean.
It's incredible. And once that city is built by the corals, maintained by the turtles, and purified by the oysters, it becomes a thriving oasis.
Right.
And that concentrated abundance of life attracts schooling fish in massive numbers.
Right.
And an enormous prey population inevitably draws the attention of the apex predators.
Now, when we hear the words predators and sharks, we usually picture danger, chaos, or, an ecosystem in peril.
Sure.
But the documentary illustrates that here, the predators are the ultimate mechanisms of balance, and they run a shockingly organized operation. The reef is essentially patrolled in synchronized shifts.
It is a brilliant behavioral division of labor.
Yeah.
By staggering their hunting times and utilizing completely different techniques, they prevent any single predator species from exhausting the local food supply.
So let's look at the day shift first. You have the blacktip reef shark.
Slender, incredibly fast, and easy to spot with those distinct dark tips on its fins. They patrol water that is sometimes barely a meter deep.
Very shallow.
Yeah. They dart aggressively through the tight coral spaces, ambushing smaller fish and cephalopods. Their speed allows them to specifically cull the weak, the slow, and the sick from the schools.
Which actually keeps the prey population healthier overall.
Right. But then the sun goes down, the day shift clocks out, and the night shift clocks in.
And that's when the Arabian carpet shark, which is also known as the tawny nurse shark, takes over.
Right.
And they use a completely different hunting strategy.
It is basically a totally different vehicle. Like, if the blacktip is a sleek sports car, the carpet shark is a stealth vacuum.
I love that.
It has this mottled brownish camouflage that allows it to blend perfectly into the sandy bottom during the day, practically invisible.
Yeah.
But at night, it creeps along the reef and uses an incredibly powerful suction mechanism to literally extract sleeping fish and mollusks right out of their hiding crevices.
And then reigning over the physical structure of the reef itself, you have the orange-spotted grouper.
A true heavyweight apex predator. They have a massive head and incredibly powerful jaws.
But the wild part is it doesn't even need to bite you to catch you.
No, it doesn't.
When prey gets close, the grouper rapidly expands its massive gill cavity, which creates a sudden, violent vacuum in the water that instantly sucks the prey straight into its mouth.
It's so fast.
It really is. But okay, I was reading through the source material on this grouper, and I had to read this one specific sentence twice to make sure I understood it. Apparently, they are protogynous hermaphrodites.
Yes, it is a phenomenal biological adaptation.
Right.
It means they actually possess the ability to change their physical sex over the course of their natural lives.
So every single orange-spotted grouper starts its life as a female,
Yes.
and then, as they grow larger and mature, a specific portion of the population will biologically transition into males. It is an automatic, built-in survival mechanism. It guarantees that the population remains completely stable and capable of reproducing, no matter what external pressures happen to the ratio of the group.
What's fascinating here is how we interpret the presence of these massive animals.
What do you mean?
Well, it is easy for us to view a giant grouper or a patrolling shark as a menace to the reef's inhabitants.
Sure, like the villain of the story.
Right. But ecologically speaking, their presence is the ultimate metric of success.
Oh, interesting.
If a reef ecosystem supports large groupers and sharks, it means the reef is fully mature. It proves that the foundation of prey is rich enough and stable enough to support the absolute top tier of the food chain.
Wow.
They basically function as the immune system of the reef. By eating the mid-level predatory fish, they prevent those mid-level hunters from overpopulating and completely wiping out the tiny herbivorous fish.
And those tiny fish are the ones constantly eating algae off the coral, keeping the reef clean. So we have this explosion of life. The grass, the corals, the shifting sharks, the groupers. But think about all this living, hunting, and eating. That means there is a constant, invisible rain of organic waste, dead tissue, and debris falling to the seafloor every single minute of every day.
It's a lot of waste.
It is. If nothing processed that debris, the whole Gulf would essentially drown in its own garbage. So where does it go? We have to look at the literal margins of the Gulf, the muddy shallows and the sandy beaches.
We're talking about the cleanup crew.
Yes.
The unsung heroes of any functional ecosystem are always the detritivores and the scavengers.
Let's start just offshore in the shallows. You have the Arabian eagle ray. They're beautiful to watch, looking like they are practically flying through the water with those wide, pointed pectoral fins.
They're stunning.
They cruise slowly over the sand and dig deep into the bottom to find buried mollusks. And by constantly churning up all that sand to get to their food, they are actively aerating the seafloor.
They're essentially tilling the underwater fields. Turning over the soil allows oxygen to mix into the sand, which allows beneficial bacteria to break down the remaining organic matter.
And then up on the actual dry beach, you have the Arabian ghost crab. They are perfectly sand-colored with these wild stalk eyes that give them 360-degree vision.
Yes.
As soon as the tide recedes, they emerge from their holes acting as like a rapid response scavenger team. They meticulously recycle dead fish, washed up algae, literally anything organic that hits the shore. Plus, the extensive deep burrows they dig physically pull air down into the wet sand.
And that burrowing prevents the shoreline from becoming an anoxic zone.
What's an anoxic zone?
An anoxic zone is an area completely starved of oxygen, which quickly turns into a toxic, sludgy dead space where nothing can survive.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so the crabs are crucial. But the resource management of the Gulf isn't just happening on the sand. You also have to look up into the sky.
The birds.
Exactly.
Picture the greater flamingos gathering in the shallow, hypersalty lagoons. They flip their heads upside down and use their highly specialized beaks to filter the thick mud. They mechanically trap tiny crustaceans and algae while pushing the mud out.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, fun fact from the source, those specific crustaceans are packed with carotenoids.
Right.
Those are the natural pigments that literally dye the flamingo's feathers pink.
It's so cool.
It is. But here is a question about the mechanics of this system. We usually think of birds as transient extractors, like they swoop in, take resources from the sea, and fly away. Do they just take the Gulf's nutrients and leave?
Not at all. It is an incredibly reciprocal relationship.
Really?
Yeah, the source material highlights both the flamingos and the Socotra cormorant, which is a bird endemic to the region that dives deep into the open water to hunt schooling fish.
Okay.
They don't just extract calories, they give back in a massive way through their droppings, their guano.
Ah, the magical fertilizing power of bird poop.
It cannot be overstated. That guano is incredibly rich in vital chemical nutrients, specifically concentrated nitrogen and phosphorus.
Okay.
So when these massive flocks nest on the rocky, barren islands or wade in the shallows, their droppings wash back down. They act as a highly concentrated fertilizer, returning those essential building blocks back to the water and into the terrestrial soil.
Wow.
Yeah, they form a critical chemical loop, seamlessly connecting the rich marine ecosystem to the otherwise desolate terrestrial islands.
Okay, so we've mapped out the seagrass on the seafloor, we've explored the architecture of the reefs, we've watched the scavengers on the shores, and we've seen the birds in the air.
We've covered a lot.
We have. But the Gulf is still a massive volume of water spread over huge distances. How do these distinct neighborhoods actually interact? I mean, from the muddy mangrove estuaries all the way out to the open sea.
Well, you need highly mobile species that transcend those geographical boundaries and need the biological connectors.
And some of those connectors have evolved stunning physical traits to survive the commute. Take the West Indian sea snake. It has a flattened body, and its tail has literally evolved into a wide fin to paddle through the water. It never needs to go to land. It just surfaces briefly to breathe.
Right.
And it hunts with a highly potent neurotoxin. But its ultimate adaptation to the Persian Gulf is how it manages the salt. Because this sea is a hypersalty soup. Drinking it should dehydrate an animal instantly.
Oh, it is a masterclass in physiological engineering.
Yeah.
They possess specialized sublingual glands under their tongue.
Under their tongues.
Right. When they take in seawater, these glands actively extract the pure water the snake needs to survive, and then they push the highly concentrated salt back out into the ocean.
It's basically a living desalination plant.
Exactly.
But